So short-term rental properties are an interesting investment. I recently went to a meeting where there were representatives of the city of Virginia Beach, city of Norfolk, and one of the representatives from the city of Virginia Beach used to work in Chesapeake. So they were able to share information about that city as well and what their regulations were on short-term rental properties. In addition to that, I own a short-term rental property in Davenport, Florida, so I'll share with you a little information about that. Now, to start, the city of Norfolk, they will not allow short-term rentals in East Beach. Besides that, they do it on a case-by-case basis. Understand that there's a lot of restrictions with what they will allow. There's parking restrictions in both cities. Uh, in Virginia Beach specifically, they said that you have to have a parking spot for each bedroom. So if it's a four-bedroom house, you have to have four 9 by 18 parking spots that are off-street parking. Norfolk, I cannot remember if they had, if that it was the exact same regulation, but they do have certain parking restrictions in order for it to be approved as a short-term rental. Now, in the city of Virginia Beach, they will allow short-term rental properties in all of Sandbridge, and there is an area near the Vibe District where it's mapped out, and you can see the map attached to this email, that they'll allow short-term rental properties. They will not allow them anywhere else in the city unless the property had previously been used as a short-term rental property and there was not a 2-year gap in its usage as a short-term rental, and they had actually set the short-term rental up properly and been paying the proper taxes, not just using it as a short-term rental, but actually had registered it, etc. Now, the person from Virginia Beach who used to work at City of Chesapeake shared that the City of Chesapeake has no regulation on the short-term rentals because they do not allow short-term rentals. Per the city code, they're not allowed. However, you can have a bed and breakfast. The bed and breakfasts are only going to be allowed in agricultural 1 district or in South Norfolk area of Chesapeake because it's a historic district. That's not to say there aren't short-term rental properties in Chesapeake. They're just not supposed to be there. Now, why would somebody want to invest in a short-term rental property rather than a longer-term rental property? And I can tell you from personal experience, the reason I did it, and I think why most people tend to do it, is because they want to actually use the property. They want to have a property that sits there that brings them in some cash flow every month, but that they can go and vacation at and have that feeling of ownership when they're going on vacation. And that's certainly why I decided to purchase the property there in Florida and use it as a short-term rental, because my hope was, yes, to make a profit, but also be able to go actually use my house there. Now, I can tell you the one in Florida has not been as profitable as I hoped, but that's because there's a lot of short-term rental properties in that area of Davenport because it's near Disney, Universal, a lot of the theme parks there. There's a lot of short-term rental properties in the area. There's some neighborhoods that are more short-term rental than longer-term residence. The property I actually purchased in, it's more longer-term residence, but there's still quite a few short-term rentals in there. Now, areas like Virginia Beach, the restrictions that they're placing on the short-term rental properties will actually increase the value of the short-term rental properties. So if you have a property, for instance, at the north end that's already grandfathered in that you can use as a short-term rental, that's going to bring in, premium price because it's a unique thing that is not, there aren't that many properties, but there definitely are a few properties out there. And even the ones down, near the Vibe District around there, the fact that it's just restricted to that small area will help the cash flow. Now, of course, when you're looking at ocean type properties, the season is going to be, more around spring, summertime, maybe even a little bit late fall. Some people may tend to do like a, 5-month rental during the winter, something like that. Other areas like the area I have in Florida, the seasons are going to be different depending what it is. And of course, Florida has a lot of beaches, so there's different things on that. But ultimately, I would say the motivation for most people investing in a short-term rental is the ability to use the property. There may be some other unique people who just decide this is the niche they want to get into because they like vacations and they want to acquire several short-term rental properties. And to me, that makes even more sense because you get kind of economy of scale as you're doing more. All the little details become easier. And when I talk about all the little details, it's definitely there's a lot more communication with the tenants in short-term rentals than in your longer-term rentals. Because of course, longer-term rentals, you find a good tenant, you place them in the home there, and then generally, unless there's a maintenance issue, you are not communicating with them on a regular basis. Whereas with the short-term rentals, these are people who are on vacation. Some of them tend to have this feeling that you should be there to communicate with them constantly. Other things come up. You've got to coordinate cleanings between there. So there's just a lot more involved. There are the online platforms that have their rules to help you get the place booked. So Airbnb and VRBO are kind of the most common. And in fact, some people tend to use Airbnb and short-term rentals synonymously because Airbnb was sort of the original with these short-term rentals. Those platforms, though, they have their rules so that you can get ranked higher in their placement. Things like communicating, how quickly you respond when people ask you a question. Of course, how your reviews look. You're all just constantly pushing for the 5-star reviews because if you get below a certain percentage of your stars, then you are no longer a super host, and there's certain benefits to being a super host. So there's all these other hoops to jump through with the short-term rentals and all kinds of other things, the nuances that kind of come in with it. So in conclusion, the short-term rental property investment, it's interesting, and it definitely has a certain niche of people who may want to get into it. Just remember that it's more intensive than the long-term rentals, and there's definitely a lot more hoops to jump through if you're not purchasing a property that's already being used for that.